Hello and welcome. I'm Kathy Jessup, and I'm delighted to be participating in the Ottawa Children's Storytelling Festival 2022 edition. I'm telling stories today from my home in Edmonton, which is within the traditional Indigenous territory of Treaty 6 in West Central Alberta, and also within the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 4. You know, whenever I'm telling stories or listening to stories or writing and creating stories, I use my imagination a lot. And I think of my imagination kind of like a muscle. You know how your body has arm muscles and leg muscles, and if you're going to run and jump and climb and carry heavy things, you need those muscles to be in shape, or they won't work when you go to use them. I think the imagination muscle is kind of like that. It's a brain muscle that needs to be kept in shape. Use it or lose it, as they say. But how do you exercise your imagination? Well, I think the easiest way is to listen to stories. Because when you're listening to words and they're coming into your ear and then your brain starts to work to try imagine what it's hearing, to try and see. So if the words are talking about something, then your brain will maybe flash up what's like a picture to you of what it is. Or maybe some people even see it like a little short snippet of a video. They can see the scene happening like a movie in their mind. And that's their imagination muscle working. So today I'm going to tell you several stories, and we're going to see if we can keep that imagination warmed up. My first story is about a pig, so maybe you'll begin by imagining this pig. There once was a poor and foolish pig, and his name was Harvey. Now Harvey had a hard life. Because he was foolish, he couldn't keep a job, so he never had much money. And because he was foolish, everyone thought he was so silly they didn't want to be around him. So he didn't have any friends. Life was difficult. But lucky for Harvey, he lived in a land where there was a very wise and kind king. And one day he heard folks talking, and they said that you could go see the king and tell him your troubles, your problems, and he would give you advice to fix them. And Harvey thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm off to the palace. And he set off down the road. Now he hadn't gone very far when he came across a sly and hungry fox standing right in the middle of the road, right in his way. And the fox said, "Where are you going to, pig, on such a fine day and in such a hurry?" And Harvey said, "Oh, I can't stop and talk. I'm off to see the king." And the fox laughed and said, "What would the king want with the likes of you?" And Harvey explained how they had a kind and wise king, and you could go to him with your problems and he would give you advice. And the fox thought about that, and he said, "You know, I'll let you pass if you do me a favor. When you see the king, you ask him something. You see, I'm a very clever, smart fox. I know I am. But no matter how hard I work and how many ways I try to catch my supper, I never seem to get enough food. I'm always hungry. You ask him why that is." And Harvey said, "Sure, I will." And so the wolf let him pass, and Harvey carried on his way. Down the road he went, and he was coming to a bend in the road, and he could hear some noise around the other side. It sounded like a screaming, crying, squealing, awful combination of noise. And when he came around the corner and looked, he saw that it was coming from a lady pig. She was very beautiful and obviously very rich because she was dressed in fine clothes and had lots of jewels. But she was unhappy about something. And Harvey went up to her and he said, "Oh, my dear, whatever's the problem?" And she goes, "Well, I don't know. You see, I'm clearly very rich and very beautiful, but I'm sad all the time and I don't know why." And she started to cry again. And Harvey said, "Listen, please, if you will just stop that crying and all that noise, I'll do something for you. When I go to see the king and get my advice, I'll ask him for you too, what you can do to be happy." And she said, "Oh, that would be wonderful." And Harvey said, "Okay, but just no crying until I come back and give you your advice." And she agreed. And with a smile and a wave, Harvey was gone. Off he goes down the road some more. And he's getting very excited because he can see the castle in the distance up on the hill, and it's getting closer. And just then his path stops at a creek. And it stops because there's no bridge. Now, it's a pretty wide creek and pretty deep. You and me, we might be able to take a running leap and get across it. But Harvey was a little pig with little legs, and Remember, he also wasn't very good at troubleshooting, so it wasn't easy for him to think of other ways he could get across, and so he just gave up. He sat down and thought, well, I guess that's it. I'm done for now. I'll never get to the palace. And as he sat there, he heard kind of like a weird moaning and sighing noise. And he looked all around, but there was no one. But there it was again. And then he realized it was coming from a tree on the other bank. And he said, "Tree, is that you making all that weird noise?" "Oh, yes," said the tree. "I'm dying. I'm very weak and very tired and oh, so thirsty. And I don't think I have long to live. I'll soon be gone." And Harvey said, oh dear, that's a bad problem. I myself have a problem. I was going to go see the king because I'm a poor pig and I want to stop being poor and I want to know what I can do about it. And he was going to give advice, but now I can't cross this creek and I can't get to the palace and I guess I'll never know. And the tree said, "Well, maybe I can help you out if you help me, because I think I have just enough strength left that I could bend over and stretch my branches and they would reach the other side of the creek and you could use them like a branch and come across. And then in return, when you get to the palace, you could ask the king why I'm so sick and how I can get healthy again." "Oh," said Harvey, "that's a great idea. I don't know why I didn't think of that. You bet." And so the tree stretched its branches and Harvey scampered across. And when he was on the other bank, he gave a promise and a wave to the tree and off he went. Well, in no time at all, he arrived at the palace. And wouldn't you know, it was the one day of the week where the king accepted the public as visitors. And so the gates were open, in goes Harvey through the palace all the way up to the door of the throne room. That opens, and there's the king sitting on his throne. And he says, "Can I help you, young pig?" "Oh, yes, your majesty," said Harvey. And he explained his problem about being poor and what could he do about it. And the king said, "Well, what you must do is go down the road of life with your eyes and ears open, and then good things will come your way." "That's it," said Harvey. "That seems pretty simple. Down the road of life, eyes and ears open, good things are going to come to me. Well, your majesty, since that didn't take very long, do you think you could help me with the problems of some friends of mine?" And the king was in a good mood. He agreed. And so Harvey told him about the tree and the lady pig and the fox, and the king gave him a nugget of information for each of them. And then, before you know it, Harvey is out of the palace and on the road back home. And down the road he goes until he comes to, yes, the tree. And oh, it is looking even sicker, if that's possible, and so ill. And the tree says, "You're back. Oh, good. What did the king say?" Harvey explained. He said, "I just have to go down the road of life with my eyes and ears open and good things are going to come to me." The tree said, "Well, what about me?" And Harvey said, "You know, the king said that it's obvious. Here you are planted beside the creek. Your roots should have lots of water. You should not be thirsty. And yet you are. So something is buried down under the ground that's getting in the way. Your roots can't get to the water. It's blocking them. So you dig down, get whatever that is out, probably a big rock or something, and then you'll be fine." And the tree said, "Well, that's good advice, except I can't dig." "Oh, but pig, you can. I tell you what, if you would do me the favor and dig for me and get whatever it is out of the way, well, it might be a rock, but it could be something valuable. And if so, you could have it." And Harvey said, "Oh, I doubt that very much. But listen, sure, I'll dig down for you and get it out of the way. And in return, you just make me a bridge going back again and we'll call it square." The tree agreed. Harvey began to dig. His little hoofs were flying and the dirt was flying. He gets down a couple of feet. Ka-thunk! He hits something. He muscles it up onto the ground, and it appears to be an old chest caked in mud. And the tree said, "Oh, right away I feel better. I can feel that water rushing to my roots. Thank you, pig." And the tree looked over and said, "You know, that chest, it's got gold hinges and there's some jewels on the lid. Maybe it's got something valuable inside. True to my promise, you can have it, whatever it is." And Harvey said, "Listen, I don't have time to be dragging an old crate behind me down the road of life. I've got to hurry up, keep my eyes and ears open so good things can come my way. Nah, whatever that is, you can give it to somebody else. Just make me a bridge to get across and we'll be even." And so the tree bent its branches, over went Harvey, and he carried on his way. And down the road he went until he came to the lady pig. And oh, she brightened up when she saw Harvey. She said, "You're back." And Harvey said, yes. And he explained the easy advice the king had given him. And the lady pig said, well, what about me? And Harvey said, well, the king says, you know, in life, it's not enough to be beautiful or handsome and have lots of money. You need love. The king said, you find somebody you can love and somebody who'll love you back, and then you'll be happy. Well, said the pig, you know, I'm a girl pig and you're a boy pig, and I'm very beautiful and very wealthy. And I was just thinking maybe you and me. And Harvey said, hold it. I can see where you're going with this. Gonna have to stop you there. I do not have time for romance. I've got to go down the road of life with my eyes and ears open so good things come my way. I don't have time for love. You're gonna have to find somebody else, my dear. Sorry about that. And with a wave, he was gone. And down the road he goes until he comes to the sly and hungry fox, who is even hungrier by this time. You're back, pig, he said, licking his lips. Oh, yes, said Harvey, and the king had the greatest advice. I'm just going down the road of life with my eyes and ears open, and good things are going to come my way. And the fox said, oh, what did he say for me? And Harvey said, well, the king said, if you should ever meet a poor and foolish pig, you should eat him. And that's exactly what the fox did. Poor Harvey. Well, that's what you'd call a surprise ending, hey? But I like that story. I like the twist because I feel I'm kind of like that pig. I'm going down the road of life and I'm focused on what I think I should be doing, and I've got a plan, and I don't always stop to kind of look and see what's happening around me, and maybe if I need to change the plan and listen to what other people are saying. I'm just driven to get going forward as fast as I can. So maybe there's a message in that story for me, maybe for you too. And hopefully you could do some imagining. Hopefully you saw maybe the beautiful jewels on that old chest, or you saw the king on his throne and Harvey and all the other characters. And if you could see some of that, then your imagination is firing. It's warmed up nicely. So we'll go on to another story. The next story I have for you is about a dog. And I love dogs, so whenever I come across a dog story, I want to learn it and share it. And this story happened long ago. It comes from a faraway place. If you were to visit San Juan in Puerto Rico, you would see a large, bustling modern city. And if you looked out into the harbor, you would see a strange rock jutting up out of the water with a weird shape on the top. And there's a legend about that rock that goes back many years, back to a time when San Juan was just a sleepy little fishing village. Now at that time there lived a man by the name of Don Manolito. He was a fisherman and he had a hut at the edge of the village. He was tall and thin. He had brown, tan skin from the sun and thick white hair and kind of a sad smile. No one could really remember how it was that Don Manolito came to live in the village. He seemed to have just been there forever. But there were rumors. Some people said Don Manolito was secretly Spanish royalty, and he had come to the island to get away from all that publicity and lead a simple life. But other people said, no, Don Manolito used to live on another part of the island, but then his beloved wife died, and he moved here to get away from his sad memories. As for Don Manolito, he never said much at all. He was friendly enough and kind, but he was kind of shy and kept to himself. But he did have one friend, and that was a dog named Taino. Like Don Manolito, Taino was quiet and shy, and he had been a stray dog living on the streets until they had found each other, and now they were inseparable, always together. Wherever they went, if Don Manolito went through the village down to the shops to do some market shopping, Taino would be trotting along with him. And if the old man was coming home and he stopped to sit on the stone wall and maybe smoke his pipe for a rest, Taino would sit right there on his haunches waiting for the old man to finish, and then they'd be ready to go home together. The only time the two of them were ever separated was each day when Don Manolito would join the other fishermen to go out to sea and fish. Don Manolito and Taino would leave the hut and they'd travel through the village down to the ocean shoreline, and all the men would climb into their boats and Don Manolito would get into his, and then they would row out to fish. And as soon as their boats disappeared over the horizon, Taino would sit down and wait for Don Manolito to return, for he always did, and he brought with him a fine catch of fish. and he would save the biggest fish for their dinner. Don Manolito would fry it up, and Taino would sit there with his nose twitching, just smelling those aromas and waiting for his share. And so it was, the people of San Juan got used to the sight of Don Manolito and Taino going down through the village to the water's edge every morning and coming back every evening. It was part of the natural rhythm of the village, just like the ebb and flow of the ocean, or sunrise and sunset. Well, one day, the fishermen had all rowed out as usual, and no sooner had they disappeared from sight than dark storm clouds began to gather on the horizon. The clouds turned a dark black with a greenish tinge, and thunder was rumbling ominously. And then the wind picked up, and the water started to churn, and it changed color. Well, the people of San Juan, they knew the warning signs. A bad storm was coming. And so the merchants, they locked up their shops, and they went home early. And the women, they brought their laundry back in on the line, and they called their children to come on into the house to be warm and safe when the storm hit. And even the fishermen, they came rowing furiously back to shore with tales of a horrible storm that was raging further out to sea. And soon the streets of the village and the shoreline were deserted. Except for Taino. He sat on his haunches down at the water's edge looking out to sea, waiting for Don Manolito to return, for he always did. And then the storm hit, and it was a bad one. Lightning flashed and thunder crashed, and it was like a monster possessed the sea. Huge towering walls of water rose up, and they crashed on the sand and on the rocks. And those waves would catch Taino and they would fling him. But when he landed, he would get up and shake himself off and go right back down to the water until the next wave flung him over and over again. And still he went back down to the edge and waited and watched. Well, that storm raged for hours. It was the worst anyone could remember. It made the blood of even the most seasoned fishermen run cold. But Taino, he kept by the water. And then when the storm reached its peak, when the winds were shrieking and howling, Taino plunged into the water, and he swam to a rock that was jutting up out of the waves in the middle of the harbor. And he climbed up on that rock and sat down on his haunches, and he stared out to sea, waiting for Don Manolito to return, for he always did. And he kept vigil on that rock for hours while that storm raged around him. But finally, when dawn came, the storm blew itself out. Slowly the clouds parted and a few rays of sun poked through. And as the clouds rolled away and the wind died down, then the ocean calmed. And that's when the people of San Juan came out of their houses to walk the streets and survey the damage of what the storm had done. And some of them went down to the ocean to see if there was any wreckage that had blown in. And somebody happened to look out into the harbor, and they saw that shape on the rock. They thought it was a person. They began to holler that somebody had to go rescue that person, and everybody was yelling and hollering. And the fishermen gathered, and they said, well, we'll go get him, whoever it is. And they jumped in their boats, and they rowed out to the rock. But one of the young fishermen, he was fast and strong, he got there first. And when he looked up, he saw that it was Taino. And he yelled out, "Why, it's Taino!" And the call went from boat to boat. "It's Taino! It's Taino! It's Taino!" And soon all of those fishermen in their boats were gathered around the rock, and they were all looking up at Taino. And they said to one another, "What on earth would possess that dog to come out to this rock in the middle of such a storm? Why would he do that?" And then they remembered that no one had seen Don Manolito since he had rowed out to fish the day before. And the fishermen fell silent, and they hung their heads. Because these were seasoned fishermen, they knew the truth. They knew that if Don Manolito was not back by now, he wouldn't be coming back. He was lost to the sea. And then one of the fishermen said, we're all that Taino has now. We have to look after him. We've got to get him down off that rock. He must be cold and scared and hungry. And the young fisherman, he volunteered. He got out of his boat and he climbed up on the rock and he bent down to pick up Taino. And as he did, he let out a cry of shock and amazement because Taino had turned to stone. Well, it didn't take long for that news to travel all over the island, and the people took it as a very bad sign. Something horrible was going to happen. It was an evil omen. It was bad, terrible news. But as the days went past and the weeks and the months, and nothing bad did happen, slowly people resumed their lives. The fishermen went back out to the sea to fish, and the merchants went back and opened up their shops and sold their goods. And once more the mothers stood on their step and put out their laundry and called to their children who were playing together. The natural rhythm of the village returned, just like the ebb and flow of the ocean, sunrise and sunset. And so it is today, as the people of San Juan rush about their busy lives. Maybe they've forgotten this story, or maybe they were never told it to begin with. But if they were to stop for just a second and look out into the harbor, they would see that rock still there. And on the top, the shape of a dog in stone, sitting on his haunches, looking out to sea. A silent, forever witness to the great friendship that once existed between a fisherman and his dog. So there you go. Kind of a sad ending, hey? It's hard to lose our pets. But there's something about that story I love, and I think it's because Taino, he gets to live forever. He becomes part of the legend. And so there will always be a Taino, and his story will always be told. And I think that's really, really neat. I love that part. And I wonder if you could see those images when you listen to the story and feel them, feel the storm, and feel those fishermen looking up, and the love between Taino and Don Manolito. That's your imagination muscle, working hard. Well, I've got one more story for you. And this one is mine. It's one that I wrote years ago for my children. It's also a fishing story, and I promise it has a happy ending. I call it Hilary's Fishing Trip. On the day that Hilary's grandpa promised to take her fishing, Hilary woke up really early and really excited. She had never ever been fishing before, and she was just sure this was going to be a trip to remember. Hilary and Grandpa quickly ate their breakfast, while Grandma packed them a lunch to take along for later. And into each lunch bag she snuck a surprise treat. In Grandpa's bag she put a big hunk of his favorite chewy toffee. And in Hilary's bag she stuffed a long red licorice stick. When it was time to go, Grandma stood at the dock and waved goodbye, while Hilary and Grandpa climbed into the boat, turned it around, and headed out for Grandpa's favorite fishing spot. Hilary noticed her grandpa was even wearing his special cap with the words "Champion Fisherman" written on it, and she knew her grandpa was the best fisherman in the whole world. Well, as they settled down to do some serious fishing, Hilary looked down into the water and she said, "Grandpa, are you sure the fish are down there just waiting to be caught? I can't see 'em." Grandpa tugged on his cap. "Trust me, Hilary, I've been fishing these waters for many years. I know just where to find the biggest, the tastiest fish." And with that, he reached down to a bucket between his feet and he pulled out a big fat worm and he shoved it onto his hook. Then he reached over to do the same thing to Hilary's rod. "Oh, yuck, Grandpa," she screamed. "That's gross. You're not going to put that on my line, are you? Ugh, what kind of fish would want to eat that?" Grandpa tugged on his cap. "Trust me, Hilary, I've been fishing these waters for many years and I know what kind of bait these fish like." Well, they sat at Grandpa's favorite fishing spot for hours, and they never even had a nibble. Finally, Grandpa said, maybe we better try my second favorite fishing spot. We'll have better luck there. Trust me." So they tried Grandpa's second favorite fishing spot, followed by his third favorite fishing spot, and they even tried his super guaranteed never fail fourth favorite fishing spot. They didn't catch a thing. Now, by this time, Hilary was hungry. "Grandpa, do you think maybe the fish might bite a little better after lunch?" she hinted. "Good idea," grinned Grandpa. So they put down their fishing rods and they opened up their lunch bags. Now, while Hilary was munching away on her sandwich, she got to thinking about those fish down under the water. "You know," she thought to herself, "if I was a fish, I wouldn't want to eat a disgusting worm. I don't care how starving I was. I'd much rather eat..." And just then, Hilary spied the treat that Grandma had put in her lunch bag, the red licorice. "That's it," she thought, "red licorice. I bet if I put a hunk of that on my line, I'll catch a fish for sure." So, when Grandpa wasn't looking, Hilary took the worm off of her hook, and in its place she put a big juicy chunk of red licorice. "Trust me, Hilary," said Grandpa, when they threw their fishing lines back into the water. "These fish always bite better after lunch." Still, you should have seen the look on Grandpa's face when all of a sudden a great big rainbow trout leapt out of the water, did 2 loop-de-loops in the air, and dove straight for Hilary's hook. It was a tremendous battle. That fish pulled and tugged, and Hilary pulled and tugged, and finally she reeled that fish right into Grandpa's net. Well done, Hilary, beamed Grandpa. Boy, I've been fishing these waters for many years, and that one, that is the biggest, the most humongous fish I've ever seen come out of this lake. Yep, those juicy red worms work every time. See, Hilary, all you had to do was trust me. Grandpa, interrupted Hilary, I didn't exactly catch this fish using a worm. See, I sort of swapped the bait when you weren't looking, and, What? Sputtered Grandpa. Swap the bait? What do you mean you swapped the bait? Just what did you use to catch this huge fish? Red licorice, said Hilary, in a teeny tiny voice. Red licorice, roared Grandpa. Red licorice? He scratched his head in amazement. Well, I'll be a monkey's uncle. And with that, he took off his champion fisherman cap and he put it on Hilary's head. Hilary smiled proudly, and then she reached into her bag for the rest of the red licorice. She shared half with Grandpa, and they turned that boat for home, sitting side by side, munching away on red licorice and staring out at the water very seriously, the way good fishermen do. Now, when the boat pulled up to the dock, Grandpa turned to Hilary one last time, and he said, Are you sure you caught that fish using red licorice for bait? Really? Oh, yep, Grandpa, nodded Hilary. It was red licorice, all right. Trust me. And with that, the 2 fishermen headed up the cabin, up the dock towards the cabin, where Grandma and supper were waiting for them. And that's the end of the story. I find that one easy to get pictures because, of course, I wrote it, and so I can imagine Hilary in my mind very well, and the rainbow trout, and the grandpa, and the hat. Lots of things to think about. I hope you worked your imagination hard today. I hope you worked that muscle. I always feel tired when I tell stories, and I feel tired when I listen to stories because my imagination has worked so hard. So keep it up. I had a wonderful time. I hope you did too. Thanks very much. Bye-bye for now.